Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name's Emma Lefebvre, and today we are doing our part 2 of my process of how I painted this. So if you watched part 1 of our how to sketch it, then you'll be all ready. If you haven't, make sure to go and watch that one first if you're interested, or if you feel like tracing a photo, doing it that way, and then just seeing the painting process, you can do that. Before we jump in, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, click that notification bell so you're notified every time I come out with a new video. All right, now let's get started. Okay friends, so today we are on part 2 of this sketch slash painting, and today is the fun part for me, which is painting it. So I showed you in my last video how I sketched it out, how I kind of looked for shapes and then proportions and all that fun stuff, and now we are going to paint it. So I can't have this reference photo right here while I'm painting because I need my paint there, but I will try and put it on screen, maybe in the top right hand corner, I don't know, and I'm just going to kind of go through my process of how I paint it. So I'm gonna grab my paint. Again, I am painting in my Paul Rubens watercolor 100% cotton hot pressed, not sketchbook, it's a block of paper. I have brushes with me. I have a size 10, 8 round, and then like a liner detail brush. And then my palette is my Ultimate palette. All the colors are listed in the description below. And we're ready to go. Okay, so step 1 of this is laying down your first layer. So illustrations like this, I like to work in lots of layers and then build that way. So we always start with the lightest layer, which would be the highlights of the photo. So we don't want to go any darker than the most highlighted part of the painting. But I don't really leave any parts white. So here's the photo again on my phone. So as you can see, we want to go like the most highlighted parts of the jacket is this light blue right here. So I don't want to make my painting of the jacket any darker than that. There is a pattern on the jacket, which is like a bright yellow dinosaur pattern, which I'm thinking I might do the dinosaur pattern on it after, on top with gouache, just because it's such a light color, and trying to, you know, paint little outlines of dinosaurs, it might just be too difficult. So I'm going to do the whole jacket blue. And then as for the pants, he's wearing these like cute little airplane jammies, but there's just so much patterning going on. And if I'm going to keep a pattern for the jacket, I'm going to make the pants probably a really light wash of gray to make them look a little bit more on the white side. You could always change them. But one tool that's really cool, which I'll show you with my iPad, if you do have an iPad and you're kind of wondering what kind of way to go for the colors, is kind of this eyedropper tool. So especially for skin colors and stuff like that, because, you know, my son has very fair skin, but, you know, this photo, he's in the shadow. It's pretty dark. So you would think that you would use a light peach for his fair skin, but if you use this little tool here, it's like a, hold on. This tool you can find, you just kind of hover it over where it is, and you can see it's like a brown color because it's in the shade. Even the lightest part of his finger is like this not so light peach. So it just kind of gives you an idea of the values even with, so here's the light part of the jacket, the darkest shadows. So I do love having my iPad for this purpose as well. Obviously you don't need it, but it's a fun tool to use. So it gives you kind of an idea of where to start with your colors. Okay, so I forget which blue is which blue. So I'm going to look at my little swatch card of my palette. And the blue for this, I feel like it's kind of like this Inthrandone, I don't know how to say it, blue, or like a Prussian blue. Obviously you can do whatever you want. I kind of want to do this one. Do I want to do this one? It's more a Prussian blue, I think. Let's go for Prussian blue. Okay, so that one is this one. And I'm going to start by wetting my brush, getting some of our Prussian blue here. Actually, I should probably just make a space in my palette for my new color. I'm just gonna, and really any other colors, it's fine. Okay. Like that. Just making a new space, and I'm gonna grab some of my Prussian blue, like so. And I just grabbed a tiny, tiny bit here, very, very small amount. And I'm gonna use mostly water. And I'm gonna start by going over the whole jacket. Now that's even too dark. So I'm just gonna add more water to my brush. And I'm gonna try and use whatever's on my brush right now for the whole jacket. So we get this really nice light value of Prussian blue. Okay, I'm just gonna keep dipping my brush in the water. Went outside the line there. To expand this blue, because I want it nice and light. Okay, I don't want to go back into my paint at all. Just want to use whatever is on my brush for this light wash of blue. And this is going to give us our first layer, which are the highlights. I do want to dip it back in the paint, but I don't need to. A benefit to working on illustrations like this is that you can take your time. It's not like a thing that you have to do quickly and make sure it doesn't dry, so you could add in all these like color bleeds and shadows. Like, you can take your time, and it's really kind of relaxing to do stuff like this. Okay, so also if you want to lift any colors, you can always wash off your brush, dry it on your paper towel, and lift a little bit for some highlights too. But that's pretty good. Okay, so that's our first layer of our blue. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for the boots, because it's a similar color. Avoiding the toe there. Actually, this is the color of like the little dinosaur on the boots. That. This is Prussian blue, right? Yeah. I feel like I kind of want this deeper blue a little bit. Now the boots are fairly dark, so I don't need to go as light to start. There aren't too many highlights on the boots. The most highlighted area is at the toe, so I can kind of lift that blue a bit at the toe if I need to. So I just wash and dry off my brush and just lift a little bit of that color like so. Okay, and then if I want to do another part of the jacket or anything, I have to make sure that, or another part that would be touching the jacket, I need to make sure that it is dry before I can continue. The other option is to, while you're laying down your first layer, so I'm going to kind of show you, you can drop in kind of some wet on wet for some of the shadows. So let's go over the first layer again. You can do it this way and let it dry, or you can do it the way I'm going to show you. I'm going to switch to this blue. I think I like this blue a bit better. So you lay your color, again, still making it very light, because I'm realizing that my first layer was very, very light. And even the lightest highlight on this jacket wasn't that light, so I can go a little bit darker. The other way to do this, instead of just waiting for it to dry, is add in some of your shadows while your paper is still wet. So I'll show you what I mean, and you get some more blurry shadows, and then later we can do some more defined shadows. The thing with this technique is that you want to make sure that you're moving kind of fast so it doesn't dry and you don't get those weird kind of bloom marks. So remember how I made some of those shapes for some of the shadows on the jacket? What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some more of my darker blue, and I can see that it's a bit darker at the front here. Just drop it in. It's darker right before the arm here, behind here. And because it's all still wet, we're getting this soft kind of shadowy look to it. And I'm just dropping the color in. Now the trick with this also is to not have a lot of paint or water on your brush. With this whole thing, you don't want to grab, we're doing a little illustration here, right? You don't want to grab a ton of paint and water where it's gonna take over the whole thing. You just want like a minimal amount. There's more shadow at the front here. Okay, and we're gonna do more defined shadows. This is just kind of like a little bit of a base. The shadow there, there, and we will define it, just kind of adding it in while it's still wet. So again, you want to make sure that you're going fairly fast. Okay, and it helps when you're sketching to kind of sketch out those areas of where it was the lightest and where those shadows were. Okay, so now let's let that completely dry. Okay, now that it's dry, we can move on. Now you can either go in two different directions. You can continue with the jacket and finish it completely first, or you can move on to some of the other areas. I like to kind of have it finished all at the same time and then do all the detail of everything at the same time at the end. So I'm going to move on to other places that we have not painted yet. So let me do the skin, his face and his hand quickly. So for his fair skin, it would be a bit of pink, and the yellow's too bright. So I usually like to use yellow ochre. Again, I need to make a space on here. My palette's so messy. Okay. So for fair skin, I usually like to mix a bit of pink with yellow ochre, like I said. A little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of pink. We get this peach kind of color. And then remember because it's in the shadow, it's a little bit duller. So you can even add like a tiny bit of green to dull it down, just a little bit, to make it a bit more on the brown side, like that. And let's start with that color. I'm gonna lighten it up. We're doing a very light wash to start. Also gives us an idea of the color on the paper. I have a lot on there, so it looks pretty peach. Okay. And then there's a lot of shadow in there. I'm going to add a little bit more green. And then make it darker here, because it's a very shadowy. If you want to just do like brown, that works too. I tried to mix other more natural colors. Like, you really don't see much of the face as it is. It's actually quite dark there where it almost like gets black. So you can even add a little bit of gray or black, like there's shadow. A little bit of that blue. It's barely his face showing. I'm gonna let that dry. Let's do his hand. A little bit of that peachy color, a little bit of yellow ochre. Lift it up just a little bit. A little tiny highlight on the finger there. So I just wipe my brush off on my paper towel and I lift it up like that. Might grab a little bit more of my darker brown or a bit more shadow here. because you really don't see too much of this, of his face. There is a bit of darkness where the eye is. Not a whole lot. I'm just doing the tiniest little bit of black. You really don't need a lot of paint. Okay, I'll probably leave it like that for now, at least. Okay, so we did that. Let's do his pants. So he has white pants in the photo. I'm wondering if there's a different, no, we'll do white. So I'm gonna do a light wash of gray. I have some gray here, and I'm literally taking the tiniest amount. So my brush is wet, taking the tiniest amount of color, and I'm gonna place it over the whole pant leg. You know what, we can even go over these little straps just because they're gonna be blue, so it won't make too much of a difference when we do blue over. Okay. Then, because the pants are supposed to be white, I'm going to wash off my brush, dry it, and I'm going to lift up where it would be highlighted. So on the knee here, like that, and maybe just a couple little lines there. Not a lot, because we don't want it to be completely white. We want it to have some sort of shadow to it. I didn't erase the knee as much with my pencil first. There we go. Okay. Just gonna outline it just a bit. Okay. And then like we did with the other pants or the jacket, I'm gonna go back in and just kind of add a little bit of shadow. So look at your reference. Where would there be shadow? There'd be shadow right where the jacket kind of hits over top, and then all these little creases. And then the pants behind, the leg behind, would be a bit darker. Right? Now it's starting to dry a bit, so I'm getting a bit more of a defined line, but that's okay because I'm doing the creases anyway. Like that, and then we'll come back in after when it's a bit more dry and we'll do more defined creases. Okay, just work in stages. Okay, so now that that's done, we can continue to build on other parts. So for this, there's like a little dinosaur on this boot about this color, so I'm going to try and draw around it with my darker blue. Just like very faintly, and then we're going to finish the boot off. A little dinosaur. Boop. Like that. And then I'm just gonna, oh, I forgot there's like a white, I can do that with gouache after. There was like a white rim to the top of the boot. So I'm just gonna go over the boot again. Maybe I'll just leave a little thing at the top there. And we have our highlight on the toe, which I have just covered, but I'm going to redo. So I'm going to get a little bit more color here. I'm going to start dropping in some darker blue. And then take off some of that color and just make it a little bit lighter at the toe. Like that. And then remember the boot back here. There's also a little bit of the dinosaur back here, so I'm just going to leave a little bit of it blue because you can't really see the full thing. And it's going to need to be darker than the first boot. Okay, so this boot needs to be a little bit darker because it's in the shade. There's like a little bit of a shadow there. And then the little dinosaur on this, I'm going to make a little bit darker once this part is dry. Okay, let's move on to the next part. So I'm going to do the hood, assuming that everything is dry, close to it. I'm going to do the gray hood that's underneath. So again, starting off with a lighter wash. I'll lift up some of that water that's there. And then I want to just go in and shade it. So I'm going to grab a bit more, maybe a bit more black. Because there's a lot of shadow right here. And up here. Like that. And then just a little bit more. Like that. And then this part of the jacket is also black. And there's a little bit of highlight to it. It's not like a flat black. So I'm going to start off with a fairly dark black. Actually, I think, what color is this on my palette? This is Paynes Gray, actually. Do I have a black? I do have a black on my palette, but I'm using Paynes Gray, which is actually kind of almost better for this. Doesn't block it out too much. There's a bit of softness when you use a gray. Okay, so there's our sleeve. But I'm just going to lift some creases in there so it's not completely black. See that? It just gives a little bit of movement to the fabric. Okay. Now let's see. We can go back to the pants because that is dry. So I'm going to grab my gray again, a little bit more darker gray, and I'm just going to continue to build my shadows. So a bit more shadow right under where the jacket is. I'll wash it off a bit. Just blend it out. Just blending out those hard edges. And then continuing with our creases, they're getting a little bit darker now. And then again, the back leg is still a bit darker. There's a bit of a highlight down here. Sorry, there, of course, someone's mowing the lawn right now. Mid-painting. Okay, just adding some more shadow in there. Okay. Like that. And then I think that one's pretty good. The only thing is what I would do with the shadows. So I'm going to take my liner brush quickly. Wherever there's a crease in the shadow, there's a highlight on top. So I'm just going to try and lift a little bit of paint just to make it a little bit lighter right over top. Okay. I think that's fine for now. Okay. Okay, so now let's get back to the jacket, because this is definitely the most tricky part. Okay, so I don't want to make it too much darker, do I? I don't know. So I'm going to grab my blue, and I'm wondering if I should do another wash to make it darker. No, okay. I'm going to start going in for my shadows. I feel like the shadows need to be a little bit darker though. So I'm grabbing just a little bit of Paynes Gray, and I'm adding them to where the shadows are on the jacket. Under here it's all shadow. I feel like it needs a bit more of the blue. And I'm really just trying to trust the process here. I might do another wash over the whole thing. I'm gonna try and blend this out. It's definitely a lot tougher with darker colors. Okay, I'm gonna leave the pockets there. I was gonna try and go around the pockets. It's a little tricky though. I think I just need to do the whole thing darker. Oops, that's a lot. Try and blend it over here a bit. Remember, this shoulder back here is one of the lighter areas. And parts on the arm too. So you can kind of see some of those shadows underneath that we originally did. And again, I'm just going to try and put some of them in there with the wet on wet. I'm going to go over this whole hood. Hopefully you'll see those shadows. Yep. That we just did. So a light wash to make the whole thing darker, but you still get those shadows that we placed in. Okay, placing some of the creases in the coat here with the wet on wet. I'm gonna try and blend it out just a bit because I'm getting kind of like a harsh line there. So I just wash and dry off my brush. Anytime you get a harsh line, wash and dry off your brush, and then just slowly move the pigment around, blend it out. Okay, and I think we gotta wait a bit more for it to dry and then do another layer. Here I'm just trying to do the little curve from the hood. This part is dark too, which I forgot to put in. There's a little highlight there I should have left. Hold on. There, just a little bit of a highlight. I'm trying to go around these fingers to make them look as neat as possible. Okay. All right, then let that dry. So again, while we're working on the next part, we can let that dry. I'm just gonna add in a little bit more shadow there. Okay, there we go. Okay, so again, once again, I think the boots just need a little bit more like Paynes gray to them. I feel like they're a little too bright. I want them to kind of match the jacket a bit more. I'm just darkening it just a little bit. And then the boot behind. Oh, and I forgot the toe of this one. There should be a little highlight there, which I can always do too. So imagine, like, remember that if you miss an area where you find like you messed up or you put paint where it shouldn't, you can always go back over it later. You can lift colors, you can, you know, add gouache, whatever works to make it work for you, do it. Like, there's no rules. So totally up to you. Okay, and then for the boot here, I just need like a little bit of like because it's white, the bottom. I'm gonna just use this buff titanium so it looks like a beige kind of white, because let's be honest, what kids' boots are clean and perfectly white still where they're supposed to be? Nobody. Okay, just so it's not completely dark, and then I'll add the red after. Okay, so let's, actually I think that's dry. Let's do the little hoop on the boot here. Like that. Like that. All right. And then let's make sure everything's dry before we continue with the final details. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow me on all my other platforms for tons more content. Have a great day, guys. Bye.